What up, everybody? My name's Steven Jones, and I am here with Douglas Davidson of the Brown Buffalo. How's it going, Dave? Or Douglas? Call
It's
me by
okay,
your
man.
last name.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, no, life's good, dude. How about yourself?
It's good, man. Big changes, and just trying to follow the passion. So I know we kind of talk about that a lot. It's just like I don't know, keep doing shit that inspires you. Can
Well,
you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Okay, cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, my mic like turned orange, and I don't know if that means it blew up or it's all good.
Yeah, that's good. I think my mic's good right now.
Yeah, man, you sound hot as fuck.
Dude, I'm hot, man. Look at me sweating right now.
Yeah, man. So what's up? The AC's not working in there?
Nope, no AC. Just part of the gig, man. It's not as hot as down in Texas right now,
Yeah.
but for me and my Spanish blood is handling it right now. That's good. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, I feel like was it a month or two ago I was with you for like that week, and we got lucky with some nice weather where I wasn't sweating out the whole time.
Right. What shirt are you wearing right now?
I'm wearing a Solomon shirt that I don't know, I probably got some coffee or spit on. But
That's good.
yeah, Solomon, I can't remember the name. I got it on a pro deal from one of my buddies who works there.
That's the way it is here. I got my Rourke shirt on right now.
Hell yeah.
You know,
You got
Laguna Beach.
that fresh buffalo hat too.
Yeah, my fresh buffalo. So
Yeah, man. So
just plugging.
what have you been up to lately?
A lot of cutting material. A lot of customer service emails, and I've been trying to get outside and start walking again and running. I kind of
Yeah.
took a break from that for since November, and my legs were feeling it super tight, and I just needed to take a break. And that was I have some goals that I want to do, and I ran. We've talked about it in the past, but I picked up running this last year and through COVID, and I never ran really outside of in my life, and
Yeah.
I started off. Well, I got COVID this time last year. I was basically sick for this entire month, and then and I had walked, I think, about 42 miles when I was positive on COVID. So I didn't know that at the time, but I think that's what really kicked my ass the most, is just because my uh, what is it? Your immune system, just got hammered, and so I ended up going through that. But then, I got introduced to so many cool books just by different customers and stuff, and then I had this goal of just going and running 50 miles, and so I started prepping myself for that a little bit. And it wasn't so much about the running, like it's a good segue just into kind of some of the stuff we're going to talk about, but like what I found with running was like it just helped me stay focused for a long period of time. So if you
Mhm.
run for an hour, or you run for 30 minutes every day, or 3 times a week, it just continues to help stay focused and keep all the noise out
Yeah.
and kind of focus on the task at hand or the goal at hand, and so that's a huge thing, and so that's been my big thing, just my personal stuff and hanging with my kids. It's summertime, so the kids are out of school, and they're in junior guards here in Newport Beach, so that's pretty rad for them. And
What's
my
junior guards?
junior guards is like a program that the beach areas down here in Southern California offer, where they teach you life-saving skills, but it's taught by all the lifeguards, whether it's in Huntington Beach, Laguna. I don't know if it goes all the way down to San Diego County too as well.
Mhm.
Pretty normal. When you're in Australia, there's all these clubs down there too as well that you kind of belong to, and each beach kind of has its own club, and so they teach you the same skills, and puts them out in the water. And here in Newport Beach, when the waves are big, it's kind of cool to see the kids get exposure to some of the bigger spots where it could be 10 to 20 feet, on a big storm. So and then having those kids out there, just getting comfortable with the ocean and what the ocean does in those environments,
Future
kind of
Navy SEALs.
seriously, man. It's like the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts on steroids, like it's just different.
Dude, that's rad.
It's about water, not necessarily being outside,
Yeah.
which is cool.
So what last year, like what triggered the running thing?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've always struggled with mental health, and being a designer, um, really by trade, I'd always kind of focus on the business so much, and that kind of took me away from having to deal with some of the personal things. But as I got older, the things that maybe I was focusing on as a young designer, I came more proficient in it. So it wasn't like I was having to go and spend as much time on design as I used to. Your vocabulary gets bigger with materials. Your vocabulary gets, much broader with sewing and with machinery and different things like that. And so now it's like, you have this library in your mind that you don't necessarily have to go and spin your wheels on when you're younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that allowed was just like a lot of those deep thoughts, those deep things that were kind of coming up from the bottom, to kind of start surfacing. And it's stuff I just needed to focus on. I've been pretty public about mental health and the challenges it's had in my own life. But biggest part is just you know being accountable for it, once you're aware of it, and then you have to actually apply yourself. And it's one thing to just continue to have that wheel just turning, but you're not really trying to do anything.
Yeah.
And so for me with running kind of came out of nowhere. It was one of those things where I wasn't able to be around anyone for about a month or so. And I remember I was kind of going through a challenge in my life where I just needed something to take my mind off of the business. And my cousin at the time was like, he's, worried about me, and my friends were worried about me just because I was, just consumed here trying to save this business.
Right.
And I think it was my friend Lance out of Montana or somebody like that, just like, hey, you should get out and just start walking or running or something, And so I just started walking, and then I came across, I think Lance forwarded it to me, but David Goggins, who's a
Oh,
Navy SEAL,
the dude's a savage, man.
savage, right? And he's worked with that whole crew before, and so he's like, I think you're going to dig this. And we have a lot of active duty military and private security customers, and they kind of reached out to me too while I had COVID, and just said, hey, you should read this or focus on this. And then it just went into other folks who are challenged with PTSD from being in that space. And lo and behold, man, it was like a gift, from God, where I was just like so psyched on how powerful running was. And, like I said, it's not about the fact of running. I hate running, to be honest, but like
Running's
just
literally the one thing I will not do.
for sure. Right. Yeah. And running was just not that. And so for me, what I got into was focusing in on staying focused and breathing, and because, I've grown up surfing. I've grown up in the ocean, and, in surfing, you're kind of, in the water, you're kind of taught to hold your breath,
Right.
you're not really there to breathe. And so, and even in snowboarding too, like I wouldn't even be paying attention to how much I was breathing, but now it's like, I think back, I'm like, God, if I would have focused on breathing so much more, like what a difference that would have played.
It's so interesting when I think about the standard health practices that I really need to work on. A is breathing, B is drinking water. I
Yeah.
am so terrible at those things, but those are like our primary lifeblood. And I don't understand why it's so easy for us just to shake it out. Like, not, it's out of sight, out of mind. All day I'm drinking coffee. I'm drinking these stupid Zevia like drinks.
Totally.
And then I'm I'll go to bed and I'm like, I'm kind of dehydrated, and that's the other thing, like focusing on sleep for me has been huge.
Do you do that?
What's that?
Do you focus on that stuff though?
Yeah, I focus. Well, no. So I have in the past. My primary focus is always sleep and diet. Like as far as working out, breathing, drinking water, those are all things that I want to do that I've never actually set goals for. But my goal is to every night is like go to bed by 11 p.m., no later. Any work that happens after 11 a.m. is not important. Like it can happen the next day. I want that 7, 8 hours of sleep because that's our shit. That's like literally how our brain regenerates, recharges, connects the neural pathways. And without that, we're screwed. But as an entrepreneur, like this whole last week, like last night, I put my kids down. My wife went to pottery.
Mm.
She left about 6 p.m. and I put my kids down to bed at like 8:30, and I passed out at probably 9:30. And I just woke up at 1:30 and I was like, oh, 4 hours. Well, I got a YouTube video to post today. I got to make sure I get my cut reels for Instagram. I got to make sure I get the patterns refined that are launching today. So I've been up since 1:30 in the morning. And that's the thing that, like, as an entrepreneur, there's so many, like when you have a corporate job, I think it's so easy to be like, well, it's 5 o'clock. See you later, and then go home, have dinner, hang out with your family, do your thing, and then go to bed. And on the weekends, kind of check out because
Mm.
you don't own that thing. But when you own it and you're trying to make a living and you're trying to like build this thing that's unbuilt, built this like invisible thing out there.
Right.
I think it's so easy to ignore those things because we're just so hyper focused
Mm.
on the end goal. But I think it just shoots us in the foot. This whole week, there's a couple one night I went to bed at 3:30 in the morning. One night I went to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I'm up with my kids. If not up with them right away, I'm up like an hour later because like I gotta like live my life and,
Totally.
and be there for my family. So I think it's super interesting. As like something that I want to get into more is actually like measuring these things, because whatever you don't measure doesn't get done, right?
That's the
Um,
truth.
so I just think it's kind of like, I was doing this YouTube video and I was on my plotter cutter. I cut out this pattern and I knew the plotter cutter was acting up a little bit. And so I measured all the gusset pieces. I ended up having to trim like inch and a half off of them. And but I didn't measure like the primary panel. I just measured the gusset pieces. And that was the whole like measure twice, cut once.
Mm.
Whatever you don't measure, like the shit doesn't get done. I feel like those two sayings go hand in hand. And even if you're measuring 1.5 times, it's still not twice.
Mhm.
You're still cutting a corner. You're still gonna fuck something up. So for me, smoking, drinking more water, like I want to quit smoking. I want to drink more water. I want to get adequate sleep. I want to spend enough time with my family. I want to spend enough time doing shit for myself, like getting out, going and hiking and climbing mountains. Like that's my jam. But I literally, I deprive myself of those things in this um, pursuit of whatever the hell it is that I think that I'm pursuing, this financial freedom, this security, this whatever it is. So I think that's something I really want to start doing more is like learning how can I measure these things? And then the part of that is like accountability. I
Mm.
hate accountability. I don't want anybody to tell me anything. Like if I'm fucking up, tell me I'm doing awesome, please. Otherwise, my ego is gonna get super damaged, you know?
Right.
And I need to learn, like, dude, how do I become accountable to somebody? Like I can honestly say I don't really know what that looks like in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It takes some, searching for sure. I know for myself, like, because I didn't know what that meant. Accountability in that context. I mean, most of the stuff I've learned in the last year. And there's, we're not given the right tools. I think, we can talk about like what should be in schools and stuff all day long, but the reality is it's current, right? And you're having to deal with this,
Yeah.
and for me, it's like the accountability side was just stepping away and kind of looking at myself from like a, we always use this term, like if I'm working in house somewhere or anywhere, but it's like the 40,000 foot view of your life or the 100,000 foot view of your life. And like, what's that look like, and
Dude, you just went full Jeff Bezos.
yeah, right. And so it's like, it is. And it's the reality. So like for me, it's, I know for myself, I've had to go and look at it and ask friends and ask honest opinions, and a lot of my friends, I think, thought I was going to be burned out by the time I was 30, at the rate I work or the level I work at.
Yeah.
And, I was worried because it was kind of in my head. So I thought I might be burned out, and then, 35 came around, 40 came around, then, and then, and once I turned 40, I was like, oh, wow, and then it wasn't until this last year until I really had to jump in and start working on more of the psych side. And I wanted to, I've always thought kind of in the future, but I've also lived in the present at the same time. But where I've thought about in the future, and I thought about this when I was, I think 20, 24, 25, when I was working at Quicksilver. I was like one of my first real jobs. And I looked around and I remember some of the senior designers were turning 30 at the time. And they had so much anxiety because they thought their career was over. And I didn't get so caught up in that. But what I did like think about, I was like, well, what does happen when you're aged out of some of these brands? What does happen? What is your backup plan? And or how do you retire from being a product designer? And
Yeah.
I
What's
don't think,
next?
yeah, and I don't think a lot of product designers think about this when they go into it. But there really isn't a generation in front of us that has, a retirement plan. There isn't unless you're working at a large brand, maybe that has some kind of structure to it. But for the most part, the contractors, the independents, even the folks working at some smaller companies, they don't have necessarily the it's not set up as an infrastructure,
Right.
and so I look at the designers who are ahead of me, like say 5 to 10 years ahead of me. Those designers ahead of me have no plan. They're still just kind of figuring it out. And on my end too, it's just like, I don't have a plan as well, and it's like, and that's just the reality. Um but then I talk to my friends who might be lawyers or might be doctors or, in these different positions, and they're pretty set up, as far as how they're going to go forward in life. And it's different for everybody. So part of that, of wanting to like work on those things, was also trying to be able to create the roadmap in front of me. I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to see in front of me. I wanted to see those beacons that, um, you know, I was able to kind of see in front of me, in front of myself, and, of course I could have always stayed out a large brand. I could have always worked in a house. But, my careers in those brands lasted no longer than probably maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
And it was just because I'm too much of an entrepreneur in the context of, wanting to do things, and do new things. And I've had so much exposure into, so many different companies, and from the executive level down. Most of the time when I get hired by, either a president or an owner or some type of executive at the top.
Mhm.
And it's like one of those things where it's really challenging, because then you get thrown into this young group, typically with bags and accessories. It's like this carousel of people coming in and out who, versus in footwear, it's like you meet somebody in footwear, they wanted to do footwear their entire life. That's all they've wanted to do. In
Right.
bags, when I first started, no one wanted to be in bags or accessories. It was just really that step to either apparel or that step to, another department or another category. And so usually the product managers, the developers who work on these teams, they would maybe last the most 2 years. But that's why, for myself, like I had such a long relationship with the Burton crew because our team lasted there for so long, and we all wanted to be there. It was just a hungry crew, and we all had the same drive, in that space. I don't know where I was going with that, but like kind of,
No, I think you're going, and may correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of that future vision, right? So we're talking about kind of just doing the grind, getting up every day. You could be short-sighted and living every day in the moment, you know, kind of in your lizard brain, like, oh
Yeah,
fuck, fire, oh fuck, fire. Like I gotta do all this stuff. Oh, I gotta launch this. I gotta like, oh, I gotta get these photos. Um, and it's really the mental health aspect. If I draw this into it, it's kind of like pausing, taking a damn breath, maybe
yeah,
take a sip of water and say, where am I going? Right? It's like if we
for
don't have a
sure.
roadmap of where we're going, then what the hell's the point of doing what we're doing? You know, you could step into the forest of darkness, um, and you'll come out if you're going on a quest, but without that quest, you're just going to wander around in the forest.
Totally.
And I was talking to my wife a couple days ago. Well, it's a couple weeks ago. She says, "So, what's your vision for Bagbuff? Where are you going? What's the thing?" And I'm like, "I got it. It's up here. I got it. Just don't worry about it." And for the last week, I've just been like, before I go to bed, I have a bajillion thoughts in my head of like, okay, these are the steps I can take. So I'm like taking down notes, and I'm having like dreams, and I'm just like, I feel this. Okay, I feel it. Taking down notes, and I'm like, dude, okay, that's great. You're taking notes, but like, how are you gonna draw a plan to make this happen? And also, we're in a new place of life. You know, I just left my job, and now I'm doing this full time, and it's kind of a question of, you know, how do we want to structure our life going forward, right?
Hmm.
Because the last 10 years since we've been dating and married and have kids, it's just been the grind, it's just been the hustle, and I've kind of feel lost. Like we're just spinning wheels. We don't feel like we have any traction.
Right.
We have roots in Tacoma, but we're just spinning wheels trying to survive, you
Hmm.
know? And then the question is like, okay, so we have this instability, where we have stability in family and friends, but we have this instability in so many places of our life of like, dude, what does that life look like? You
For
know,
sure.
I grew up having so many visions of what my life was going to look like. My life looks nothing like it. And sometimes I look at that, I'm like, Jesus Christ, what did you do, man? You're just the biggest fraud screw up in the planet. And that's my insecurity just going
Right.
over and over. Dude, you're such a shithead. When the reality is I've just never sat down and said, this is who the fuck I want to be. Like this is it. This is where I want to go. This is the plan. I think there's a problem with that without planning, you
Yeah,
know,
totally.
I need to set a plan. I need to set measurements and start taking control of that kind of stuff. Otherwise I'll be spinning my wheels forever.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take that break and you got to step back, I try to do it at least once a month, and just try to carve out 30 minutes. Once you've done the homework once, it's a little bit easier to go back and make adjustments where you
Yeah.
need. Um, with the business, it's one thing. With personal life, I just know it's more focusing on myself and making sure. And when I say focusing on myself, it's like focusing on my mental health
Yeah.
and making sure I'm making time for myself, making sure that I'm doing any type of exercises I should be doing as far as like, reading or just learning more about myself or going to therapy or, anything that I'm able to have tools that can help myself out,
So
and
outside of running, so you said, you have running, you have therapy, you have reading. What are some things and like measurable, like how can you measure like if you're putting enough time into yourself and if you're doing the right things that are filling your cup?
I think it's focus, for myself, I feel like it's focus, I think it's different for everyone, but like being focused, I don't think I'll ever really be content. I don't know if that's in my DNA.
Same.
But as far as like, being focused, and I feel like the less scatterbrained I am, if I'm not being pulled in different directions, that is always, I can just sense it, when I feel pretty tense and things are a little bit out of whack, or I know that's when things are off, and also my friends can tell too, it's just like, all of a sudden you're looking at some of my posts and it's just like, dude, where's your head? You know, what's going on? You're feeling a little bit dark there, you know? And
the hell's wrong with Douglas today?
yeah, what's the hell? Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's like, and you know, I mean, it's cool that, you know, that's the cool part about social media and different things like that, where you do have kind of people to hold you accountable, you know, and those are good things, you know. And I think also my relationships with people, you know, that was a big thing I had to really work on this last year as well, you know, and even the year prior, where I was so, you know, I'm always working, always focused, always kind of in that space. And just friendships where I've known people for, you know, almost 20 years, 25 years now. And, you know, I came from the school of don't show your cards and don't, you know, hold everything to your chest and stuff. And,
Yeah.
make sure that you're, in a corporate environment. Personal life, it's a little bit different. I'm a little bit more open, but like on, for corporate life, that's the way it is. You know, it's like, if you want to be successful at Nike, just play your cards right. You know, it's just be a good, learn poker. And, you know, every person who's gone to that executive level, they might be good at what they do, but they're really good at playing their cards, you know, and not in a malicious way, but just like in the context of like, they see themselves as this position, and how do you get there? They might have a mentor in that company. They might be really good at observing everyone else's cards and learning how to go and position themselves, because it's not about just being a great designer. It's not about being a great marketing person. It's not about being great at any of those things. It's also about being a good leader, you know, and knowing how to put yourself in that position and elevate your crew, your department, your company, you know. But those are just playing cards, you know, on that level. As much as, you know, if you're in Washington, you're playing your cards. You got a lobbyist, right? If you're in this group of lobbyists, are they playing cards for other people, whether it's corporations or whether it's, you know, whether it's businesses or whether it's politicians, they're playing their cards, and they all want to, you know, probably the main goal is to be the president, you know, or to be a senator, or to be a, you know. And so with that, it's the same thing when you're in-house at these companies, same, I wouldn't say the same ideologies, but the same principles, you know?
I think that's right. You know, it's positioning. And that's something I noticed, you know, when I had more of a corporate job. You know, I'm kind of rough around the edges, you know, like I just kind of say say things how they are. And it can be very abrasive, right? And that's not playing the right cards to like climb the ladder.
Right.
But I just love doing good work. I love challenging. I love improving. I love doing things better and better. Yeah, man, it's hard. that corporate world's like not for me. And I think that's kind of where we're built the same, is like, man, this entrepreneurial, like, yeah, I just want to do my own damn thing. You know, I want to go surfing. I want to go surfing when I want to go surfing. I want to hang out with my kids when I want to hang out with my kids. Like this morning, you know, my wife takes my son to a dentist appointment, and I just got to like kick it with my daughter. She's 3. We ate some cereal and we danced to Miley Cyrus in the living room for, I swear to God, an hour and a half. I don't have a job, right? So it's like I get to do that, and I get to do that literally anytime I decide it's fit, you know. And that's the kind of lifestyle that I want to have for sure.
For sure. I mean, that's great. You know, it's, if you can do that, and, you know, it's not about being financially successful, you know, it just isn't. You know, I've worked for enough owners that look absolutely, you know, unhappy walking around their own building, you know, and they have plenty of money to retire and move away or sell their company. But, you know, there's drive in those owners, you know, and there's skin in the game, versus, you know, when I've worked at public companies, you know, most of those presidents have never, they didn't use their own, you know, time and power and knowledge necessarily, and their own financial means to go and build those brands. You know, there's no skin in the game in that context. You could be off, you can be wrong on something, but like the reality is like they can always move on, you know, to the next company, right? but it's different for those private owners who have everything invested, and
Right.
and it's a completely different drive that their families are invested. They're not to say the families aren't invested in these public companies, but it's a little bit different of a schedule. Hey, I'm just going to hire 2 more people to help support my, you know what I mean? Like, and
I would love to hire 2 people right now. That'd be great.
right. And it's just like, and like, don't get me wrong, like there's good things to say about that too, because like when you're in those companies, there's some things that you can, different causes that you can get involved with, and then you do have the means for those causes, and
Right.
but I think Chenard and Jake Burton, have definitely proven that you don't need those. You don't need to be a public company in order to be successful.
Right.
Both those guys in their families, have invested so much, and I have such I admire them a lot.
Admiration.
Admiration, that's the word I'm looking for. Admiration, where it's just like, or anyone else, in that space, anybody who goes and starts their own, small business, large business, whatever. But being able to see that and see those brands grow with a really good, solid direction is amazing. And you just hope the long term, like those brands can be sustainable.
Yeah, man. I remember when I first learned about Yvon Chouinard, I don't know, 8 years ago. Lost my damn mind. I was like, this guy's a saint.
Yeah.
I think for a company that I would love to work for, I think I would love to work for Patagonia. I think that's a company where I could like proudly work,
Right.
and I'd feel good about it. I wouldn't feel like I'm in this like corporate rat race.
For sure.
But also, I just want to do my own damn thing.
Could you hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
We got someone here says, I love hearing I'm not the only one who has these attributes, good or bad. Focus is key. Yeah, I promise you're not the only one with the with the attributes. I got some pretty nasty attributes.
Sorry about that.
You're good, man.
All right. Hopefully everyone heard that.
I didn't hear a dang thing. I think
Cool.
you successfully took out your earphone.
Cool. Yeah. We had some shipping happening in the back.
Rad. Yeah, man, I think when I was in therapy the other day, I was talking to my therapist, and I was so unsettled with like where I am in life, and I was just like, I'm not where I want to be. I have this vision of being somewhere else. But the reality is I'm here, and sometimes I hate it. Like, I'm just like, what the hell am I doing? I'm just going to abandon everything and like start a new life and just like go balls to the wall, like at whatever cost. I don't care the cost. I want that life that's in the vision. And of course the question comes up like, well, when you're on your deathbed, like what's going to be important? And I'm like, well, I don't damn know what's going to be important on my deathbed. I can make some assumptions, but I get where you're going with this, right? It's like, what's your legacy? Like, you always hear people talking about, oh, my brain just went dead.
I think that part too is like, not to cut you off, but like jumping in on the legacy stuff. Like for me, I'm going to be dead in the future, like no one's going to remember me.
Right.
Like it's like, and I don't live life that way, but the reality is I don't think about my life that way. It's like, I lost both my parents fairly young. I lost my mom at 19. Then I lost my dad. I want to say about maybe 12 or 13 years later. And having gone through both those experiences, and life growing up wasn't, I don't know what's perfect, but like, I know there were some challenges along the way that, it also made me who I am today. Those experiences of losing my mom is who I am today. And, it's one of those things where like, for my dad too, it's like, it surfaced up like so much negative shit that I think that was kind of the problem, is like where I didn't take a step back and look at all the good things. and there's so many good moments, not just with my parents, but that happened during that time. By my having kind of a rough childhood, and it also allowed me a lot of freedom and independence because I didn't want to be so much at home, but so I was out on a skateboard or I was out doing something else. And that allowed me to go and explore and to go find new things that maybe I wouldn't have found if, everything was like perfect, and rainbows and, all this stuff. But when I look back, my mom gave me so much strength as far as to being agile. And my dad gave me so much, more challenged me as a human being of like, be good at something. And in his own weird way, my dad grew up a suit and tie guy his whole entire life. I never knew him anything else but like, he was a great salesman. He was a great, just people person, and I admired that because I've never been really that outgoing in that context. But he could have walked in a room and just like, just had everyone entertained. My mom on the other side was really quiet, and she was very like more like trying to figure out like what's wrong with you, type of thing. And like, just, I don't know, like, but then when she like wanted to live life, she was a school teacher for 30 years but she worked as a part-time travel agent on the side. And she loved cruises. Teachers love cruises. And, we grew up taking, so many, I must have been on over, I don't know, 20 something cruises by the time I was like 16,
My God.
And yeah. And then we traveled through South America, my mom and I, and my sister's like, my sister's just super intelligent, and we talk about it sometimes. It's just how we grew up, but we lived completely two different lifestyles, and same household, two different lives. And my sister has always been my emotional support, and she's always been in my corner. But it's like, again, nothing was perfect. But when we look back in time, like when we look in hindsight, it's like we try to remember those good times and those challenging times. I think they're so scarred in you that you could focus on those, or you can just move on. And and I've chosen just to move on, and at this point in my life, and so when you think about like legacy, it's like, I just remember my parents as good people, but I don't come down and think about the details, or like, I highly doubt anybody's going to remember me of like anything that I do. And it's just one of those things where, you just got to focus on now and just be around the folks you that love you.
Well, that's one thing that I said is like, well, when I'm on my deathbed, I want my kids to look and say like, that motherfucker did everything that he wanted. He had like no regrets, and he loved me amazingly. Right. That's like literally all I care about is like that one lesson of like, just do exactly what you want with your life, which I have such a hard time with. Like, I'm such a martyr in like my relationships, anything. I'm just like, I will die to myself to keep the peace in a relationship with somebody else.
For sure.
Otherwise, I completely cut out the relationship because I'm like, well, I don't want to die to myself for that. So adios. We're not talking anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting thing, man. I obviously 2 months ago when I came down and stayed with you for a week, like, I just needed to clear my head, right? I just needed to like have that space, and it was such a good time, and I came like a good time to like refocus, and I came back, and then, have some more life stuff happen. And now I find myself back in this, like, what the is going on,
Right.
And so right now I'm just currently in a stage of like, all right, man, like what's the next step? And do you just stumble through it in the dark, or like, are you gonna make an action plan? And I think that's the key right now is actually like, make a damn plan,
For sure.
Like visualize that.
Yeah. And something that I didn't know, but I learned a little bit later is like, there's a grieving process, to losing any job, right? Or to moving on to a new job or new opportunities. And and so there's that. You just have to do that. You kind of have to sit there with your like your emotions, you know, and kind of sit
Yeah,
with yourself and just be present. Um, and let those emotions come through you, you know. It's nothing's going to be perfect, you know. And um but that's where I think once you're able to do that, then I think you'll be able to let whatever's in front of you, and then you know where you want to go, kind of like manifest itself, you know.
100%. Well, I'll find myself, last week you had called me that evening and it was about maybe noon that day and I just got
Mm,
hit with massive depression. And the way that I deal with that is I numb my brain on my computer,
mm,
just try, but it's like frivolous. It's non-productive. It's not doing anything. Like what I need to do when I get hit with that is like drive in my truck or get in my truck, drive to the mountains and like just camp under the stars and just be like, I'm not doing shit for productivity because that's not what matters right now. I just need to feel exactly what it is that I feel. But I remember like you called and just like this is where I struggle. I don't have solid relationships in my life. I think it's because I'm so hard-headed and I don't like I'm so focused on doing my thing um that I just kind of like I push relationships off to the side because I can't afford them, you know.
right.
I can't afford that time investment into an actual relationship with somebody that I think is like meh, okay. They're okay. But then I get left with when I get in these dark places, I've got nobody to talk to. It just so happens you called me when I was in that deep state of depression. As soon as we got off that call, man, I felt like a million fucking dollars. It
Mm,
felt amazing. And that to me said like, yo, dude, you better start investing in some relationships
for
because
sure.
they're powerful, man. Just another human, just talking, just like getting shit off your chest, just communicating. And I have my wife, I have my kids, but that's different, right? It's like
For
I can
sure.
I can communicate with my wife, but there's something about like in a friendship outside of like that intimate relationship. There's like this other type of relationship of I kind of see you as a mentor. So I guess when you called me, I was just like you said the things you did, and I was just like, oh my
Mm.
God. I feel so much better. But yeah, relationships, man. I think it's something else. Water, sleep, relationships. I need to focus on those.
It's funny you say that too, like with relationships, even for myself, like my guy friends, girlfriends, like it's this 2 years ago, I totally opened up to a group of friends, you know, that not everyone lives nearby here just because I moved around a little bit, but I have some great friends in different little pockets of the country. And I consider them, you know, my brothers and sisters for sure. And um, but I've never allowed myself to be vulnerable, you know, like you want to put a big test out there, you know, pick a couple people that you want to be vulnerable to and be totally open, honest, and almost to the point where it's like being, you know, talking with your therapist. You know, it's like you always hear about like the person who goes to therapy, but they lie in therapy, you know, and it's like they're lying to their therapist. And it's always like hilarious, you know, to me that you go in. I mean, I understand the insecurities of sharing stuff with somebody that maybe might be new, but your therapist is there so you can share 100% everything, you know. And
Yeah.
that is for on my end, you know. It's like I wanted to be vulnerable to my friends and allow some of my friends into my life that I have known for years. And that's what I did, you know. And I focused on that, and it was amazing, man. It was like the best. Like I couldn't believe how much of a missed opportunity I've had not sharing more of my life and more of the challenges and more of the things that I struggled with. But at the same time, you know, we've talked about it. My friends have talked about it in the past where it's like, you know what, we're too young to even understand what that meant. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, um, in the context of just experiencing in life, you know, it's like you can be really strong minded and have that ego drive you, but most likely when it's doing that, that is probably the one thing you don't want it to do. It'll get you so far, but eventually that ego needs to take a back seat and you need to start balancing that out a lot. But I see a lot of people in their late 20s just have this really strong ego, and they have these very strong opinions, without any life experience, without any like just cultural experience in that sense. And so, and then as you go into your 30s, you're thrown. It's a wild card, because if you're single throughout your 30s, you have one lifestyle, right? You're single. If you're married, and you don't have any kids throughout your 30s, you're still single for the most part.
Totally.
But then you throw kids into the mix of it, that's a whole new chemistry that you're trying to figure out. Then how are you trying to be successful? And if your partner is just starting their own career or a new career, you're having to be supportive there. And there's so many dynamics just like that in that space. Or maybe your partner just wants to, be, once you have children, like staying at home, I don't know, but it's different for everyone. And it's one of those things that, I know for myself, like being vulnerable to my friends, like changed everything, for my business and for my personal life, and for my, most specifically my family, my children, and that was huge. It doesn't happen overnight. That's one thing. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to put the work into it. It took me a solid year just to see the foundation before I kind of laid the foundation, and but in no way am I perfect. I make huge mistakes, and I'm trying to learn from them, and trying to make any corrections or hear stuff, or I'll have customers, just like, oh, you got to get more on your customer service. And I'm just like, I'd love to, but like, it's me. And, it's, they'll be like, well, you got to hire that person. I'm like, it would be great if I had the capital to,
Right.
But it's just like, but to have somebody answer, I don't know, a few dozen emails a day, and then not to have anything after that, it's hard to hire somebody in that position. So you're trying to bootstrap it as long as you can, and, but I've also had some great people help me out too. It's just like, but when you don't have the means to have that support around you, you just got to kind of suck it up and deal with it,
Do the damn thing. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I think in this last week, I've shot video, edited video, made patterns, formatted patterns for download, edited code on the website, got all the product. It's like literally every damn thing. And then I'm filing my quarterly taxes. I'm filing my annual. Like it's so much. It can get so overwhelming, but it's also so worth it.
That's a good point. Like on our personal stuff, because we're both in the same boat as far as trying to run our businesses. And it's like, I don't think, from the outside, there's a platform to share how much these startup brands, if it's owned, by a small group or just a couple people, or if it's only staffed up a few people. But it's like, for my scenario, I wake up at about 4:30 in the morning every day. And, I'm trying to get in the shop by 5. And I'm cutting materials, creating new patterns, answering customer service emails, ordering new materials, going through like any type of bills or anything that needs to kind of get handled on the operation side. And then shooting photos, having to shoot all the photos and trying to get that all dialed, and then go and ship in the afternoon, and try to jump on any customer service emails that might have come through. Along with, I'm sure I'm missing a ton of it, but like those things, as well as, being a dad on the back end and trying to be a friend to people on the back end. And that's the real life stuff, and of having to, you're sacrificing a lot, right?
Yeah.
But am I, that's a question I always ask, like, am I really sacrificing a lot? Like in the context of, and yeah, you're always, like 100% I'm sacrificing. But if I was working at any other brand, and I would still be working just as hard. Anyone who's ever worked with me at any other brand knows how hard I work and how invested I am. And so it doesn't matter if I'm going to be at this company or if I'm going to be over at another company, I'm still going to work just as hard. But if the CEO isn't working as hard as I am, if the CFO isn't working as hard as I am, then I'm out. It's like, I want to be playing at a tier 1 level,
Right.
and if you're not wanting to be the best, then I'm not going to work for you, and that's just the reality of, if it's visible, because we're all adults and you can see whether or not somebody's more focused on their own career versus focus on the brands that they're running, then that is a clear sign to me, like I'm not a good fit, because I want that president, I want that owner 100% in,
Yeah.
and the executive team has to be in, it's not, it's the surf community is pretty classic for it, I mean, it's probably one of the reasons is it's struggled over the years so much, just because the legacy issue of bringing old employees who maybe were, an ex-athlete or this or that to run a division. Like, if they're qualified to do it, awesome. If they're not, then get somebody who's better, and it's very easy to make those decisions. It's hard to make those decisions when you're emotionally attached to those people.
Yeah.
In the context of, like, they're my old friend, it's different if the person's been there for years. Put them on a plan to maybe get into a newer career within the company. But you got to invest in those people. You can't
Right.
just tell that to them in the review. You got to literally go, cool, I want you to, they work in design, but maybe they're on the back end of it, but they have a really good eye and a good level of communication. Maybe they should go into development, or maybe they should go into engineering. But don't just move them to that department and expect them to kill it. Like, give them like 6 months, invest into them to go learn what that job's about, and give them a mentor. And most likely, if they've done a really great job in this other seat, they'll probably do a great job in this next seat,
Yeah.
if you vetted it out properly. So yeah, it's a trip.
Well, I was back to when you said, you often have that thing in your head where, like, what am I sacrificing? Like, is it worth it? And I was just watching the Naomi Osaka documentary that just came out. So good. So fucking good. But she was like, what, 23 and won 4 Grand Slams. And she was just like, I think they're in Haiti jumping off some waterfalls. And she was like, I think other kids my age are just, like going to college right now. I think that's right. And she just kind of had that contemplation of like, well, is it all worth it? And she's like, well, I'm here now. I'm here where I am. And like, you never know. And I think that's a contemplation I always have. Like, is it like, where's the line? What is worth the sacrifice? What's not worth the sacrifice? And where are my priorities? If my priorities aren't straight, then I'll literally just die to my keyboard, pounding away patterns and posting to Instagram and, like, trying to do some development deals in Asia. So I think that's a huge thing, is like priorities, so that you can understand, like, well, what is it that you're willing to sacrifice, and what things do you sacrifice in the name of these other things that are higher priority. But I don't know, man. I ain't got my shit straight. That's for damn sure.
No, for sure. Yeah, I definitely, I'll be striving for that for the rest of my life. It's like, I don't know if I ever will. I don't think I was designed that way, to be 9 to 5. I just wasn't designed that way, whatever that is. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I think I've tried to force myself into that bubble once or twice before. And I just get like, I feel like I'm just handcuffed, or just trapped. And I just want to get out of it, and in the same side too, it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, what do you want out of life? What do you envision your life to be? And I didn't know what design was, at the age of, I don't know, 19, 20, 21. I didn't know there was really a profession behind product design.
Right.
I probably didn't realize that until I was like 25, and then it was just a different era, different, surroundings and stuff. But like, my goal was never to be a creative, never to be a designer. Maybe I wanted to be a painter, of some sort. But the reality is like, I just wanted to experience life. I wanted to travel. I knew that back then, I really wanted to travel. And that was a really big goal of mine, just because
That's still a goal for you? Travel?
100%, yeah, 100%. Like I love taking photos. My mom shot photos wherever we're at. She was just a hobbyist, but like she just loved photography. And so growing up, and my uncle was on the National Geographic, I think, for wind sailing, like in the late '60s across Africa, the Sahara.
That's dope.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty cool, And so like seeing this stuff, you're just like, there's some people in our family who are totally adventurous, and in that sense. And I've gotten to be in some pretty interesting places of the world, and as a young kid, so it's pretty normalized a culture, it wasn't a shock to me, to be in different parts of the world. And in the area that I grew up in was it's really pretty diverse. So
I think that's one of the greatest things I take from my parents is my dad worked for an airline, so we got to fly for free, and we would just travel all the time. And I'd go see other cultures. It's to this day. I ended up joining the Air Force, so I've been to the Middle East and Europe and Asia with the Air Force, and then obviously got into this job, so a ton of traveling to Asia. And I've always just like felt at home when traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge thing in my life that I'm like, dang, I'm just gonna jet set, man. One of those guys working on the beach in Bali. I was like, I'll be that guy.
For sure.
But not Bali because it's too popular. I'm gonna go
right.
somewhere crazier.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, traveling, I got that wanderlust all the time. But I think that's one of those things where I look at my life and I'm like, I'm not traveling enough.
Right.
What the hell is going on? This is not the life. I wanted to take my whole family to Lisbon, Portugal for like 2 months. I want to live in Japan for 3 months. And I haven't done any of that. And I'm like, did you have a plan? Like, did you say, okay, here's the plan. This is what we're going to do. In January of 2020, we're going to move to this place for X amount of months. Here's the funds that, like, I never made a plan. I'm just sitting here bitching that I'm not doing it.
Totally, right? That's the truth.
Yeah, man.
But you should do that, try to go live with your family in a different place. And, I've been blessed with having the kids in Vermont and having all my friends in Vermont. And then I lived up in Northern California for a bit, when I was working at the North Face. Had the kids up there for a bit, and then being back down here and full circle, of just having to kind of go out to Vermont, then San Francisco, back down to here, and back to Vermont and back to here. And then, traveling throughout Europe and South America and throughout Asia the last 20 years, it's incredible. It's like my career wouldn't be my career without the factories I got to work with in Asia. It's
for sure.
They don't teach on the education side of it. I would never pay like what I know now in the schools that I've taught for, like I would never, ever send my children to a design school. There's just there's no way, and I wouldn't invest my own money to it. The instructors don't have the experience to, I feel from my own experience, to teach you about what's happening overseas, and I haven't been around a lot of instructors who have current clients in the last 10 years, so it's like so much has changed, in that context of how you run a business and stuff. And so from the, if I would ever try to give advice to anybody who's starting off a career, not that you asked this, but it just kind of came to mind that I would just go, spend your first year traveling around the world, go to some places that are just bizarre, challenge yourself, put yourself in some challenging situations, or, join the military in that context, depending on like what your focus is, and
don't do it.
Yeah, this is coming from somebody who didn't, but like, for my friends who've gotten to go into some different areas, they got to see a different part of the world, and
I'm glad I joined the military to be like, now I'm like, I'm happy as hell to be out, but being in the military is one of the best experiences. I learned so much about myself in the military. A lot of it being like, what the hell I don't want.
Right.
But so much experience in, going to Kyrgyzstan and living in a tent and having these little coins that you get like 2 a day to go get some shitty beer.
Right.
It's like those kind of experiences, and you're with Marines and like people just carrying guns and fucking rockets around and taking off into the sky and seeing the light, just the sky is just lit up, by bomb, and just like, I don't know, all the way to the experiences of like flying home dead bodies. And what's
There's
that?
my coin right there from Karachi.
Nice.
Yeah. This is I had one of our customers send this over. This is when it's pretty rad, I didn't know anything about these coins, and
Yeah,
but it's like my good luck coin now. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
Dude, you know what I'm really disappointed about is when I got out of the military, I took all my patches, all my coins, except for one of my coins, and I got rid of them. And now I'm just like, what an idiot. Like why? Because now I'm just like, now I'm not bitter. Now I'm not upset and frustrated about my
For
time.
sure.
And now I just like, but I don't have, like, I have 3 things. I have like a military bag that I kept. I have my headset, my David Clark headset from when I was flying, and I have like my survival school coin. And those are the only things from the military that I have.
Maybe that's all you needed, though. Like obviously.
I think the coin, that coin, survival school, like SEER training, and the headset. Those are definitely the most important things. I think it'd been cool to have my flight suit still,
For sure.
but outside of that, everything else was just, oh, look at this cool thing, look at that cool thing. So yeah,
No, I love it.
kind of got off topic there, but yeah,
No, it's all
peeps,
good.
go travel the world.
Yeah, go travel. Go like challenge yourself. It's like traveling is the best experience I ever got in my life. Bring a camera. My friends used to hate me always having a camera around, but now, so many years have gone by. Throughout the day, I'll just be shooting, images or texts of like from 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago, and they're just like, dude, I'm so excited you had that dumb camera on you all the time, and
it's so funny when my wife and I were dating. I remember her parents, like, we were in Cannon Beach, and dude, I just had my camera out and I was taking pictures of everything. And I remember her parents were just like, are you cool with it? Like, he's just like, we're
right.
not, he's just always taking pictures. And that kind of made me really insecure about like always having my camera with me and out. And so I stopped taking pictures for the longest time. And recently I've been like, damn, I didn't get any pictures of this awesome trip I did, or like no video, no nothing.
For sure.
Yeah, okay, like forget that. No more insecurity. Like, I'm just gonna carry my damn camera around.
So good, right? You gotta love it.
Dude,
I love it,
the memories are dope. Anytime I jump into Lightroom and I'm just like, oh shit, I forgot about this trip. Oh my God, look how small my son is. Oh my gosh. I remember what I was thinking, during these moments.
Or what you weren't thinking,
Yeah. I mean, it was just so powerful. But yeah, man, I think having a camera is awesome. And it's like the designers in us, right? It's like we're always just trying to capture life in our own perspective, in our own way. And hey, it's on an iPhone and everyone's doing it. Everyone's capturing it in the same exact format and sharing it the same exact way. But I don't give a shit, man. That's my life, right? Like, I'm gonna celebrate that for what it is. Like, when you post pictures of your kids and stuff, I've never met them, but I love it. I love seeing that, man. I just love seeing, like, you're spending time with your family. They're growing up. I remember you telling me about your kid getting into fighting, and like, dude, I just like, I don't know. Anytime I see those photos, I'm just like, oh my God, look at, like, since I've known Doug, like, which isn't that long, maybe 2 years, 2.5 years. It's just like looking into other people's lives on that kind of stuff. I don't even know what the hell we're talking about anymore. Pictures.
No, but like that's the funny part. Is like when you look at those things, like, there's I have a bag around here somewhere, but I don't know where it's at. Let me see if it's over here. Oh, there it is. And you get into pictures or memories, This is like the first, I would say this is the first bag for my library. You know, like this was the bag that inspired it all. And you've probably seen it when you were here, but
Yeah. Was
you
it
know,
say on the face?
pipsqueaks.
Pipsqueaks. So sad.
Yeah. And so Ryan Posabon, who is the, I think is a design director over at Vans now, he designed this bag back in the 90s. It was like really the first skate pack. And it had like, you know, the stash pocket on the bottom. And so it's like, you got to remember, this is like 96, 95, 96. And you can have this full stash. I don't even know where the camera is, but the full stash pocket there.
Rug pocket.
Totally. And it was just like, you know, a whole different time. Like, and when he made this off of like looking through the yellow pages and finding a factory in Asia that produced this. And, you know, the first round of production came back and it wasn't the way that he expected it, but it was his learning experience. But we all saw it, you know, as his friends, and we're just like impressed that, you know, this person went and built it, almost like a level of jealousy in a weird way of like, dude, like, how did this guy do this, you know? And
yeah, this turd over here.
yeah, exactly. And we met each other up in Santa Barbara, you know, randomly in a science class. And it's a funny story, but like I didn't know he skated, I skated. We had friends in common. He grew up in Temple City. I grew up out in Whittier. And there was a friend that was in the middle of it. And then next thing you know, we just became lifelong, you know, brothers from that one experience. But watching him go through that experience with bags, and, you know, he's part owner of Bravo now, with Atiba and Berto up there. And it's killer, man. Those guys are doing a fun thing. But having friends around you with similar, you know, interests. And then there's John Warren, who is the creative director at Herschel. And again, you know, he's a brother to me, and he's a lifelong friends with Ryan. And I met him through Ryan. And, you know, he's the bad guy, but he was also at Vans as well. Both him and Ryan were really what you see today in Vans and what you saw throughout the mid 2000s of Vans refocusing on classics and really elevating it to, you know, a whole different level, along with their business partners. You know, you've heard if you read the Steve Van Doren book or Paul Van Doren book, like he even talks about them inside there, you know, and just talks about, you know, how much they help influence the direction of that brand, you know, and it's just being able to be really well connected to the customer and being relevant to that space, you know.
Is that book authentic, Paul Van Doren?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, people will argue against like why that brand's so huge, but at the time, you know, their athletes never even, before Ryan and John came there, the athletes there never used the shoes. The shoes weren't skatable. They were too thick. And you couldn't feel the wood of the board. The designs, you know, just weren't being just executed the way that the athletes wanted them. So when those guys came in, like they just listened to their friends who were the athletes. So they made those changes, and they both could skate really well. And those changes got applied, and the events they went to, or anytime there was like some kind of, you know, event, you know, Ryan and John could both kind of, you know, jump on a mini ramp or go jump on, you know, a street and just go skate with everybody and be a part of the crew. And rather than just being a fan, because a lot of the times you work at brands where, you know, the designer's looking at the athlete like there's this untouchable god, you know, and it's like, no, they're just a human being who is really good at their activity. And once you can get past that, you know, and really just try to listen, like that's where, you know, you'll have some amazing things happen, you know.
Yeah, dude. And actually, you were telling, I already have this in my Audible because you told me about it when I was in California, and I'm glad you reminded me. But yeah, man, it's so true. As product designers, developers, you know, I think there's so many people. I watched this video actually this morning, and it was Steve Jobs. It must have been 80s, 90s, somewhere in there. And you know, it must have been some sort of like investor meeting. And this guy in the stands, you know, asked him a question. He's like, can you can you tell me what you've been doing and why we're doing this and blah 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 blah, basically ripping him a new butthole, because he didn't like the way that he was doing it. This guy was very engineer minded.
Hmm.
And Steve Jobs was just like, the way that I like to work on product, and I think it's the best way, is to think about the consumer first and think about the user experience and then work backwards. Don't think about the technology you have and how can we market and sell this. Basically, how can we package this to look good to a consumer when it's really not 100% exactly what they want and need.
Totally.
And I think that's something that people do so wrong. And I've been at fault at that, is just like, oh, dude, I can design this thing or like make this thing and it'll look cool and the feature list would be rad. But the reality is like, well, on the flip end, what the fuck do your customers want? Right. It's such an important thing to understand, is like the people that you're actually making the product for.
100%, man. I see it with camera bags all the time, like it's, I have so many professional photographers I've worked with through Burton, but also here at the shop, they come to me, they can call up any camera bag company they want and get camera bags sent to them. But, you look at, whether you're reviewing a brand like Peak or you're reviewing a brand like Incase, it's just like the foam build outs and, the intricacy that's put into all these bags are just, they're not usable, for the professional, maybe for the person who wants to collect a bag or something.
Right.
But when I have like 10 of the best photographers in, sports coming through here and they're just like, nope, I can't use those bags at all. There's some cool things about them. I like this, but like outside of that, it's not my deal.
Mm-hmm.
And versus like you see the groups that focus like, in these different social groups that are saying this is the best bag ever. It's just like, well, have you guys ever used it? Have you ever professionally used this thing? And it's like, but if it's just like something hey, I'm just casually using, it's my 4th or 5th bag, I totally get it, and
yeah,
and it's a tough thing, or you're looking at alpine climbing or you're looking at any type of like a sports bag of any sort, where it's really based around the size of your physique, the activity, how hot it is outside, or what the environment's going to be like. Are you going to be layered or you're not going to be layered? Hydration packs are another thing. I always look at hydration packs when I'm going in. I still haven't seen like a really good grouping or a good brand. People will say, Solomon, or people will say this other brand, but I look at it and it's like those bags are built for people who are layering. They're using nylon on the back. There's no ventilation, so your back traps up so much heat. But then as the straps are going down here, you have another strap that there's no ventilation going over your heart. So you're warming up your heart, you're warming up your back, you're warming up all the places you really don't want to warm up if you're in a pretty big activity, and
right.
That's why when I ran, I just built my own pack where it was fully ventilated. But from the REI standpoint, that's not a commercial bag.
Right.
Usually what you'll get at REI is not really for the expert. It's more for that just
general
the consumer, not general consumer. Yeah. And so, and to look out for the specialty brands that might be that answer, it's, REI is a business. They gotta turn and burn, but like on the reality, it's like, even when you are looking for that product, they're so hard to find, that might be for somebody who's 6'1" and has a bigger build than maybe somebody who's 5'7" and, weighs $140 or something like that. But looking for those products that are really designed well, they're tough to do, for activities, because most of the stuff today, like the North Face, Patagonia, Mountain Hardwear, Arc'teryx, like when those brands first came out, they're built for the experts,
Right.
They weren't built for the mass consumer. And then they started building collections, and then those collections went on to mass consumers. And it's not like they lost focus. It's just the business got bigger, and those stores got smaller.
The money came from a different place, and so that's where they invested their focus.
For sure. And
I know.
Go ahead.
When I started my first company, Black Anchor, and I was making canvas and leather goods, it must have been around year 4 or 5 where I realized, dude, I don't even use my own product. Like I'm using technical backpacks in hiking and climbing mountains. Like, what the fuck am I doing making canvas and leather?
Right. Yeah.
That's why I feel like as a designer developer, I think it's so important to like stay in your lane. I mean, if you're gonna, I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like for me, if I just wanted to be a designer, like I'm gonna go design stuff that I would use, that I think is cool, that like I have an interest in. I don't have an interest to like go design for like Duplo or like Legos
Right.
on some shit that I'm like never gonna use. I think there's this cool thing about thinking about, there's this cool process thinking about other people outside of yourself. Maybe it gives you a little bit more
For sure.
empathy, and maybe that's super critical, important design. I think it is. Now that I'm talking this through, I think it is important to have like empathy when designing and not being so selfish. But for me, man, I just love getting into product that I'm passionate about, because then the communities that I'm like talking to while I'm developing the product, they're my people, right? And I can relate to them. And then I can understand that even within this niche, there's also so many different opinions. And then the
For
real
sure.
problem solving comes in is like, well, if this guy only uses Nalgene bottles and this guy only uses hydration bottles, but this guy climbs mountain, this guy doesn't, but he wants it for the, then it's like you get into this really deep problem solving where I think is like super fun.
For sure.
But empathy and design, you know, I think it's important. All right. I retract everything. Everybody go design some shit that you would never use for
Right.
design it for somebody else.
It's
And
100%, man.
listen.
That's so, like, for me, that's been, I've worked with so many different, experts in their fields over the years. It's like a long time, and one of the best, as a designer, one of the best lessons I ever gotten. I highly doubt he would ever remember this. I don't have a relationship with him, but he's an athlete, and I was working at Quicksilver, and for you that might not know of him, it's his name's Kelly Slater, and he's a world championship surfer, and he's kind of like the goat in the surf space, and I was in there, and we were having this design review, and I forgot what it was about. I think it was like about a sandal or something like that, and I was almost like presenting it to him like that he should be wearing it, like this is for you, and it's super young, and I just remember him just like, and growing up where I grew up, I had to get a pretty quick sense of like what's happening in my neighborhood. And it was a little bit rougher, and where I went to school and stuff like that. And so like you're a little bit more hypersensitive to your defense mechanisms were pretty high, put it that way.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm observing, and I just see his eyes just like, at first he's looking at the sandal, then they just like locked in at me, but it was like these death eyes. It's just like, what'd you just say to me, And I was just like, oh wow, like I must have just pissed him off, and but it was like it might have been something that he'd said to me that kind of like, was a trigger or something like that. And
yeah.
But anyways, it was a good learning lesson. It's something I walked away with, and I was just like, dude, you got to shut up. Like you just got to remember, like you're a student again here. This is like one of your first jobs. Don't get fired. Like you're lucky to even be working in this field. You didn't go to school for this. There's just shut up and listen. And even if you did go to school, shut up and listen, and like
100%.
That's a huge thing, and
I feel that.
And then as I, one of the projects that I'm kind of seeing different questions kind of come up on the side. And so one of the projects that really changed my, the projection of my career was working with Conrad Anker at the North Face for the Meru expedition. And at the time, like the team that I was on, majority of the team had really been just kind of beat down for the previous 3 years, and Conrad had hit me up and asked me if, we'd be interested in building a stand-up portaledge or designing a stand-up portaledge, some camera bags for Jimmy Chin, and then some, who else? And then some other gear too as well. And then Ian, who's the creative director at REI now. He, at the time, he was kind of my partner, but he worked in outerwear for the North Face. And the two of us were really like in sync with each other. And we were thinking about like, oh, maybe we can make this into a full platform. And at that time, the company was repositioning where it was going to go in the future. And myself, and then the owner of Black Ember, who's Chris Gadway, he was our creative VP. And I'd known Chris from working on some projects at Nike, where he was the creative director over there prior. And so we all got together along with a few other people in the mix, and started putting this whole program together. But none of it we ever planned to have it be commercialized, meaning that it was going to be sold in stores. It was strictly just going to be a project that was designed for these athletes, exactly for what they needed it to be. And rather than trying to design something that the athletes can use, and then it could be retail around price point structure. And so we scratched all that, and we really focused on what they needed. And, we executed it. It went back and forth, different revisions, different ideas. The designers on my team, they really fought it at first, but towards the end, they really embraced it. And being able to see those guys successfully summit and successfully like achieve their goals from that, that was a huge achievement, not just for them, but for our teams, because we'd never done anything like that at that point. And probably in the last 10 years, maybe longer. And the North Face was built off of that, off expeditions, where they created innovation was based off of these events that no one else had ever done before. And being able to go back and really reset the foundation at that time, because the easiest thing was to go and do like fashion collaborations and fashion things, and like basically building creating, or making money by selling out to that degree, and or selling into culture rather than selling into the culture that you've created. And
it's purple line.
Yeah, and perfect example. And being able to see that really opened my eyes a little bit, because it really, all the products that we were making for these guys or designing for them were had to do with life-saving aspects. For the camera bags, like the customer typically sees a camera bag, they feel that it's heavy, feels that it's padded, feels like, okay, that's durable, that's going to protect my stuff. But there's lightweight foams out there that you can use that are featherweight almost, but if the customer picked that up and they felt it, they wouldn't think it's durable mentally, psychologically. And so it would always lose at the retail level, because it would be like, what is this? Is this cheap? It's like, no, it's like you asked for it to be lighter. Here it is, featherweight, and that's possible, because we did it on those bags for Jimmy, and it was insane, man. Like, taking all that weight out, because that was one of the things from their previous tries for Maru, was that the payload was, at least the last one it was too heavy. And so, as they got caught up in weather, the rationings, they had to eat, they're burning energy. And so when you're up on the wall for that many days, things, you're limited on time at that point, and so by being able to cut out all the fat, that really, meaning all the weight, that was a huge success. But also, really for me on my end, it was really seeing my team do something that they've never done before. But I've had been built that way, whether it was through, having clients at Nike or Adidas or working with Burton. That's, that was totally normal to do projects that would never see the daylight, outside of a customer or someone who's an expert in that field, So, but doing it on that level, that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I love that story so much.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I got to wrap up. I actually have therapy.
Okay.
6 minutes.
No problem, man.
But let's
tell the wifey thank you for checking in and making
dude,
sure you're on time.
She's all coming down. She's like, yo, you got your eyes on the time, and I'm like, I'm cool, babe. Yeah, I got this.
So good.
Dude, I just appreciate your time so much. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your honesty. And yeah, man. So glad.
Yeah, thanks, man. We got to do this more often.
Yeah, dude, I'd love to. We'll pick different topics and just start shooting the shit.
I love it, man. People start chiming in too, so it's cool.
I know. Next time I'm gonna actually like talk to the audience, tell them to post some shit in here. But got a lot
Totally.
of good stuff. Sorry if we didn't get you guys questions today, but I promise Douglas and I will do this again 100%.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
All right, brother. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you.
Cheers.